Ever wonder why you're totally winded after one flight of stairs, but a pro cyclist isn't even breaking a sweat? Well, the secret isn't just in their legs, it's really all in their lungs. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Subject Simplified. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most incredible pieces of biological engineering you own, your respiratory system. Seriously, think of it as the ultimate performance upgrade for your body, and we're going to figure out exactly how it works. Okay, so here's the game plan. We'll kick things off with the instant reaction. What happens the second you start exercising. Then we'll get into the long game, how training actually rebuilds your breathing machine. And finally, we'll throw in some curveballs, those external factors that can change everything. All right, first up, your lungs on a sprint. We have all been there, that sudden, desperate dash for the bus. That's what we're talking about. That oh crap moment where your respiratory system gets a serious wake-up call and has to react, like right now. So what is the first thing that happens? Your body is screaming for a massive, immediate injection of energy. And your lungs? They're basically command central. It all boils down to two key changes. First off, you've got your breathing rate. This is super simple. It's just how many breaths you take per minute. The best way to think about it is like the RPM on a car's engine, right? When you need more power, you rev the engine higher. Your body is basically redlining the engine with your breathing. Okay, so the second change is in your tidal volume. Now, if breathing rate is how often you breathe, tidal volume is how deeply you breathe. It's the total amount of air you're moving in and out with just a single breath. Think of it as the size of each gulp of air you take. And believe me, the change is dramatic. At rest, you're just taking these shallow, slow breaths. But mid-sprint, your breathing rate skyrockets, and your tidal volume goes straight through the roof. You're not just breathing faster, you are taking these massive gulps of air with every single breath. So why does this even matter? Well, for an athlete, it's everything. More breaths plus more air in each of those breaths equals a colossal oxygen boost delivered straight to your working muscles. This immediate response is literally the difference between a sprinter having the power to win a 100-meter dash versus completely gassing out halfway through. But look, that immediate boost is just the beginning. Now, let's talk about how this all builds over time. This is the long-term stuff, the slow and steady upgrades your body makes with consistent training. This is your real-life training montage. This slide really lays out the upgrade path perfectly. It's a simple but really powerful loop. You apply consistent training stress, your body adapts and rebuilds itself stronger, and your entire respiratory system just levels up. And the result? You perform better, pushing past old limits to hit that new personal best. Boom! Okay, one of the biggest upgrades you get is an increase in something called vital capacity. Now, heads up, this is a huge term for your exams. It's the absolute maximum amount of air you can physically blast out of your lungs after taking the deepest breath you possibly can. It's basically a measure of your lungs' total usable volume. For a perfect real-world example, just think of an elite swimmer. Their huge chests aren't just for show. Through years and years of training, they've developed a massive vital capacity. It's a physiological adaptation, kind of like installing a bigger fuel tank in a car. More air means more oxygen, which means, you guessed it, more performance. This table here sums it all up perfectly. For an untrained person, vital capacity is smaller. For a trained athlete, it's that larger fuel tank we talked about. And the respiratory muscles themselves, like your diaphragm, they go from being kind of weak and fatiguing easily to being incredibly strong and efficient. And finally, the diffusion rate, that's how quickly oxygen gets into your blood and CO2 gets out, becomes much, much faster. And that really is the core idea here. It's not just about what you're born with, it's all about adaptation. Like the saying goes, the body's ability to adapt is what separates a weekend warrior from an elite champion. These long-term changes are what build truly elite performance. All right, for our final section, let's talk about the game changers. Because you can have the most finely tuned engine in the world, but performance can still be affected by outside factors. Think of these as the bugs and the bad terrain in the game of athletic performance. So you've put in the hours, you've built up your vital capacity, you're an absolute machine. But what happens when the environment itself starts working against you? What if the game is, in a way, rigged? First up, altitude. If you've ever gone hiking up in the mountains, you know this feeling. You take a deep breath, but it just feels empty, like you're not getting enough air. Well, that's because you aren't. The air is literally thinner up there.
The science behind this is something called partial pressure. So in any mix of gases, like the air we breathe, each gas has its own pressure. The crucial point here is that at high altitude, the partial pressure of oxygen is lower, and that makes it so much harder for your lungs to grab onto the oxygen molecules that are there.
This slide shows it perfectly. At sea level, there are plenty of oxygen molecules all packed together, and your lungs can easily just grab what they need. But up at 10,000 feet, those molecules are spread way further apart. The lower pressure means your lungs have to work way harder just to get the same amount of oxygen. This is exactly why athletes feel so breathless when they first start training at altitude. Okay, another major game changer is asthma. This is a medical condition where the airways can suddenly narrow, swell up, and produce a bunch of extra mucus. As you can probably imagine, this makes breathing incredibly difficult.
For an athlete, asthma is a serious challenge. It physically reduces the amount of air that can even get to the lungs, which leads to fatigue and breathlessness way earlier than it should. That final sprint, that last lap kick, it becomes exponentially harder. Now, it doesn't mean athletes with asthma can't succeed, but it definitely requires careful management to compete safely and at their best.
Okay, let's boil this all down for your exam revision. Here are the absolute key takeaways. The immediate response to exercise, your breathing rate, and your tidal volume both increase. The long-term adaptations from training, your vital capacity, your respiratory muscle strength, and your diffusion rate all increase. And finally, remember the external factors. Things like altitude and asthma can limit performance by messing with your oxygen uptake.
And that's a wrap on our explainer of the respiratory system. You now have the blueprint for how this incredible machine works, responds, and adapts. So the only question left is, how are you going to upgrade yours? Hey, if this explainer helped simplify your studies, do me a favor and hit that like button. And be sure to subscribe to Subjects Simplified for more. Thanks for watching.